Okay, welcome back. So what we've done so far is we've just opened a map and opened some feature classes. Now, think of feature classes as containers in which we have a drawer, and inside that drawer we maybe put a couple of files. Well, now we want to put some more files in there, some more records. You could also think of it as a table. So far, some of these tables actually have records in them, and some of them don't. You'll notice that if I right-click on parcel blocks and go to the Open the Attribute table, there is one record in here, which means that one shape on the map, one polygon. Survey markers, if we click on that, there are no records. Let me resize this so you can see it a little better. So there are no, there are no records in here. All right. So essentially they're containers waiting for you to put data in, or in the case of those that have been partially filled in, maybe remove some things or modify some things that already exist. All right, so what we're going to do editing. And I want to move down here and maybe edit some of these houses. Oh, buckets. Okay, so these houses are now. I don't know if you noticed that, but it looked like in one of the previous images it was there were more houses there. So essentially, what they've done here is they've tiled the image so that as you zoom at various image scales, it actually brings up different images, and it looks like one of those was a more recent image than the others. Okay, so depending on what we're going to go through here is how to add records for each of the three geometry types, point, line, and polygon, and how to add some attributes to each of those. It's a very good idea to have all of your data loaded ahead of time, as opposed to being halfway through the editing process and then adding another set of data. It's doable. It's just more of a headache with this editing tool. So let's go to the editor tool. I'm going to go ahead and delete this so you can see how to make sure that you can get to it. A couple of ways. If you right-click in the gray area, it will allow you to check the editor box and it will show up. Another way is with this little pencil. If you hover over it, editor toolbar, click on that, and you'll see here's the editor toolbar. All right, so the editor toolbar is what you need in order to go into a mode where you can add data to this thing. Now, obviously, you can't add data unless you have the correct permissions to read and write to the table. So if you are trying to read and write onto a thumb drive that has been write protected, won't allow you to do it. If you're trying to do it to a share drive that on which the file or folder doesn't have the correct permissions, you may encounter problems there. All right, so let's click on Editor and start editing. So within ArcMap, editing is a mode. You begin in edit mode, and you can only edit one workspace, what they call a workspace, at a time. And in this case, our workspace will be the DigiClass Geo database. But if you have shape files in various directories, then a directory will be a specific workspace. So you can only do one at a time. And in this case, we're not going to, we only have one data source here to worry about. Now, it does warn you about this, which means that you have data in two different data coordinate systems. And so because you do, they are actually being projected on the fly, which means they're being slightly transformed mathematically to appear in the screen in the same locations. When we get to talking about how accurate is my data, one source may be this. Every time you put in a point, it will take that point and convert it from some sort of screen units to a geographical unit, and then store it. And there is rounding error involved in that, and so that's one source of error. Let's go ahead and just click continue. Since we only have one workspace to actually worry about. Okay, let's go ahead and start with house points. They're our point feature, and points being the easiest things to digitize. We are in editor mode. Let's go ahead and come down here to editor and editing windows, and we'll go ahead and click on create features, and it should bring up a panel for you. I've docked the panel by moving, and if you hover the mouse over one of these blue arrows, it will allow you to dock. Okay, and so the very simplest thing is, well, first of all, the business rule here is I want a point on top of every house, so that as I zoom out, all the borders of the houses will no longer be visible, but I'll be able to see the points themselves. So the rule is a house point must be in the middle of an existing visible house. So I'm going to click on house points, and you'll notice that as I move my mouse out into the mapping area, the cursor itself has changed, and maybe you can see it or maybe not. There's a tiny little dot at the very end of it. So I'm going to move my mouse and just click on a house. Now, because I have what's called snapping on, it's actually bringing up this text that says house points point, and as I move away, it's gone. Also in this mode, while it's still highlighted, there's a tiny little X there. You can actually move it still. But let's not do that right now. Let's go ahead and click on house points again, and let's add another house point and another one. Let's add one to each of these 7 buildings. Okay. Now sometimes it's difficult to see what you've digitized. If it matches the background, you can always turn the imagery off. Or another thing you can do is change the symbology of the point itself. Remember that the database doesn't store the symbology. The database stores the geometry, the location, and the attributes. So, and then we can symbolize these things however we want. I'll make it a slightly bigger circle, and we'll make it red or something, and I'll make it like 10. And that way it'll be a little bit more visible. Okay, so we'll come back to this in just a second. Let's go to the next video.